Yo guys, welcome to the Zelda fiction. Today we are gonna see, what if Naruto fell in love with Kakashi? Part 2. If you end up liking this video, please consider subscribe, so without further ado, let's get into the video. Naruto stared down at the scroll in her hands as she sat on the edge of her orange sheeted bed, ignoring the soreness from after-school training. She didn't bother to switch on the lights, making the sunset the only available light source. One hand peeled the edge of the scroll off slowly. Her eyes scanned the words with such seriousness that, if possible, it would have pierced through the thin, long paper. So QB was right. Not that she doubted him in the first place. Her lips set in a grim line as she summarized the information. The user of the jutsu steals a very large amount of the victim's chakra, and while doing so they push some of theirs into the seal. The seal functions by altering the user's chakra and multiplying it and sending it throughout the victim's entire body, first around it usually at the stomach, like hers, then spreading to the chest and thighs. After that, the invading chakra stretches through the rest of the victim's limbs. It takes while the user's chakra is still fighting off the victim's, a little of it spreads and works both around the brain and surrounding it. However, this takes a lot of time because there's not enough chakra to literally consume the victim's physical chakra. When the user's chakra is done with everything below the head, it goes up to support its comrades. They eat on the physical chakra, making the brain and head smaller. But the spiritual chakra is a lot tougher than the brain, so the invading chakra would take much longer. To avoid dying off, it would return to the sea land, to simply put, get renewed before going back, explained in the instructions below. Because the body is much smaller and the chakra had already fought off the victims, it would take less time to get back to the brain. Because of this, the victim will have frequent but short painful headaches. Naruto read on, horror marring her face when her eyes looked over the estimated time left for the victim written. For the knowledge and memories, it would take roughly 1.5 years. For the victim to die, slowly and painfully, would be half a year after that. In conclusion, if she didn't do something about it soon, her memories will fade completely and she would die in 2 years. She had skimmed through this part when she was in the chamber with the Hokage, so she had missed the vital information. Her eyes grew round in shock, her breath quickening and hitching as she clutched her head. Her head had started hurting again, feeling as if an arrow had pierced through, making her drop the scroll. She missed the padding of feet walking right outside her door before it was knocked on. Naruto. What happened? Minato's worried voice came through, are you alright? Her breathing had been erratic enough to be heard, she realized. Mentally calming herself down, she squeaked out. Yeah, I just. Naruto quickly picked up and rolled the scroll closed, had a small nightmare. She stuffed it under the pillow before ruffling the sheets and falling back, just in time for the man to enter. Minato's face was slightly scrunched in worry, but loosened into a soft fatherly look as he gently sat beside her. Are you sure you're alright? She nodded, forcing a smile. I can't even remember it anymore, so it probably wasn't that bad. She faked a yawn, and I'm still sleepy. How much longer till dinner? Your mother says half an hour, so do you want me to wake you up then? Yeah, thanks, Tu-chan. He smiled as he draped the blanket over her, before pecking her cheek. Alright, see you later. If you have another nightmare, just come down, alright? Yup. Naruto said sleepily, closing her eyes, waiting for him to go out. She peeked and noticed that the room was already empty with the door closed. I didn't even hear him, she thought in amazement. Shaking her head, the blonde quickly threw back the covers and snatched the scroll from under her pillow. If it shows what order to write the parts of the seal to activate it, then it should be easy to find out how to deactivate it. Her hands traced through the words she read carefully, her brows furrowed in deep concentration. The kanji characters are written and literally squished into a spiral, like the Uzumaki swirl. She frowned. The user has to start from writing the beginning of the spiral, and when done, has to write another layer on top of it. The second layer is what multiplies the chakra, while the first makes it longer lasting. She scowled, so that's how the user's chakra can last as long as even 1 year. Naruto's lips set into a grim line. The jutsu is really just 2 complicated seals packed into one. They're not even mixed together. If she had dissolved the second layer, she'll be able to access the first, which would mean that she can stop the whirlpool zombie Kunoichi's chakra from cycling around her body. But, her brows knit together, wouldn't her chakra disrupt the flow of mine? Scanning her eyes over the contents of the scroll again, she found the line she was looking for. Yes, because the user's chakra should be unfamiliar with the victim, in addition to the loss of experience, it should make them unable to even mold chakra. So why? Naruto rolled up her shirt enough to see her stomach and molded her chakra. While doing so, she noticed that her reserves were smaller than it should be at her current age, though during training she had thought it was because she shrunk and all. A lot more than Kakashi's though. She thought for a minute before blinking. Oh. It was most likely because they were related, their chakra would be somewhat similar. So the older Kunoichi's chakra must have also been converted into her own. knowing that Kabuto must have made the zombie force more chakra into the seal. She leaned against the headboard and brought her legs to her chest, staring at the now closed scroll she held with one hand while the other rubbed her temple. It was starting to hurt from how much thinking she had done. Ugh, I might as well sleep it off. She waited in the shadows and watched him jump down from his window, the moonlight reflecting on his silver hair. His head turned side to side, looking for her, and she stepped out of the darkness with a smirk. So you came out on time. I was worried you'd oversleep, Scarecrow. Though she couldn't see through his mask, she could somehow tell his lips curled downwards into a scowl. I'm not you, Kamaboko. Didn't I tell you to quit with that nickname and start calling me Naruto? Must have slipped my mind. He turned away from her. Where are we going to train? At the river. Come on. She grabbed his hand tightly so he couldn't pull it out and popped away with him. Naruto applied chakra to her feet just in time. The soles of her sandals made contact with the water's surface before she all but threw her reluctant friend onto the grassy land. Kakashi yelped when his behind crashed onto the ground. Sorry about that, the girl apologized, but both knew she hadn't really meant it. But the glare, he got up and hopped onto the river as well. Remember, Scarecrow, ninjutsu's also an option. Without warning he attacked, fist raised and heading straight for her cheek. Naruto ducked and caught it with ease before using the force of his attempted hit to her advantage. She stood back up and pulled his hand behind her, making him lose his momentum. She rammed her knee into his stomach, knocking the breath out of him before using her other leg to kick his side. Kakashi skidded back onto the grass and refrained from groaning in pain. Despite his annoyance at being so easily thrown off, he had a smirk. Taijutsu had been her strongest point after vigorous training, no doubt, and she wasn't holding back at all. Well, she did have strength, though he had more, Kakashi smugly noted. What made her hand-to-hand combat skills superb was her speed. He watched her determinedly, though she did say he can use ninjutsu. Kakashi didn't want to, not yet, when they're just beginning. Naruto noticed this and had a grin. I've noticed this the day I met you, but you're really competitive, Scarecrow. She crouched, her hands bulging to fists. Come on. She blocked, dodged, and countered many of his attacks, but the ones that did manage to reach her had slightly slowed her down. However, she was still a tad bit faster than him. Growing deeply frustrated, he jumped back a few meters to think. A wide smirk appeared under his mask, and he waited for the other to go on offensive. She didn't disappoint, running to him with both fists kept by her sides. While he jumped back, he noticed her peculiar style of fighting, but pushed the thought back for later. When she was close enough, he took a step back before dipping one foot into the water. She saw it, but didn't have time to react when he kicked a large amount of water towards her, using chakra to expand the wave. Realizing what he was planning, she leaped back, but was too late. Damn it, she muttered, wishing she had worn waterproof clothes, or at least took off her jacket first. Now, her cotton outfit hung heavily. He charged, not wasting even a split second, making her avoid and block every one of his attacks. She didn't have time to unzip her jacket, never mind taking it off. Her clothes and his attempted hits were starting to affect the chakra to flowing to her feet. I'm not going to be the first to use ninjutsu, damn it. She smirked, since I'm already like this. Naruto ducked from Kakashi's kick before diving into the water and moving behind him, catching the boy by surprise. Before he understood her intentions, she grabbed hold of his ankles and tugged forcefully, knowing that his brief moment of shock had disrupted the chakra supporting him up. As he fell, Naruto applied chakra to her hands to push herself to the surface. He did the same a few seconds after, but Naruto slyly shoved him back in, though after making sure he had took in enough air, she didn't want to drown her future sensei, of course. He swam away this time, but she was faster than him. He glared, attempting to pull her down like she did to him, but Naruto merely hopped out of his way. Give up. She mouthed, knowing he couldn't hear her in the water. He seemed to contemplate his options before nodding, clearly unhappy. She walked to the land, not offering a hand because she knew he would just pull her in as revenge. She turned to see him wring out the water from his shirt and grinned. I win. She said in a sing-song tone. Shut up. He sneezed. Frowning in worry, Naruto hopped down to him. Hey, are you okay? Her question was answered with a glare. Alright. But just so you know, you were the one who started using water as a weapon. They both sat down, waiting for their hair and clothes to dry. Eventually, they were lying down on the thankfully warm grass, and Naruto noticed that Kakashi had curled up, back facing her. Is he sleeping? She sneaked around and saw that his eyes were closed, and his breathing let her know that he was. Sighing, she gently pulled him onto her back and used the body flicker technique. Reaching the front of his house, Naruto slightly bounced to stop the boy from falling off. She stared up at his window and wondered how the hell she was supposed to get up there without dropping him. She contemplated on leaving the boy at the doorstep but quickly crossed out that idea. Sighing, she put him down before picking him up again, this time holding him in front of her. God, he was heavy. Testing her foot onto the wall and deeming her the constant flow of her chakra safe, she used chakra on one of her hands to keep her up before using her other foot. She tried not to think how hard it was to keep holding on to the wall while holding Kakashi, who was roughly the same size as her. Eventually she reached the window, sweating profusely as she soundlessly opened it, thank God the idiot didn't lock it, and contemplated on throwing the boy in. No, Tsukumo-sensei was going to rush up and realize that they were sneaking around at midnight. Groaning, she stepped in, making sure she didn't make a sound. The floor creaked, so she put the boy onto her shoulders again before crouching on all fours. Scurrying to his bed, she pulled off the blanket before slowly getting up and placing him there. Naruto softly moves the cover on top of him and was about to get out before something caught her eye. The picture. The moonlight seeping in reflected off the glass of the frame, so she picked it up from Kakashi's bedside table. It was a photograph of three people, Tsukumo-sensei with a maskless Kakashi on his shoulders and a beautiful woman. She was laughing along with the father as Kakashi reached for her, still holding on to Tsukumo's hair for dear life. That must be Kakashi's mother, Naruto realized and smiled softly. Who would have thought this cute little boy would be that sulking broody brat? She put the photo frame back on the table and watched the sleeping hot Aki. A serene smile reached her face as she combed her hand through his hair and whispered, she's surely proud of you up there. Though, it probably wouldn't hurt to make some friends, Kakashi. She walked to the window, looked back once more at the boy, and jumped out. Good night. The Hokage sighed, leaning back into his chair as he reflected back on what Naruto informed him. I see. So we'll have to call Jiraiya here immediately then is what I'd like to say, but he has some very important spying to do a long way away from here. His lips said in a grim line, it looks like we'll have to wait a few months. But Hokage-sama. My memories. I know, we'll have to do something about that. The man frowned, we'll have no other choice but to seal them away. Panic was clear in her features and her voice, but if we do that I won't remember almost everything until I remove the seal. I apologize, let me rephrase. I'll use a special type of seal that copies and preserves your memories. The copy might not be clear, but memories you remember the best would be. Oh, okay. I warn you though, it will be painful. She grinned, I'm sure I have experienced worse. Later, down in a dark dim-lit chamber, they wind up in there often these days, don't they? Naruto was struggling from muffling her screams. The sealing process felt as if something sharp was piercing through her forehead, where the Hokage's palm was, and scrambling her brain around. If only she knew it would hurt this tucking much. Tears had tracked down her cheeks just as violently as her cries tried to escape through her lips. She bit into her shirt to keep herself from biting her tongue. Naruto restrained from grabbing the man's hand off of her and instead clenched her shorts tightly as she tried to keep still in her sitting position. Enduring the unbelievable pain for who knows how long, the Sarutobi finally moved his hand away and Naruto fell back, writhing as she all but slapped her hands over the burning mark on her forehead. I'm sorry, Naruto, I wish I could lessen the pain, but Hiruzen trailed off as he looked away from her in guilt. Waiting several moments, Naruto finally calmed down, but still breathed heavily as she slowly sat up, sweating profusely and relief wafting over her, now that the pain was nearly gone. It's not your fault, Hokage-sama, so please don't look like that. She tried to laugh, but instead winced, the muscles around her cheeks hurt from her jaw clenching so hard on her orange shirt. Still, Naruto, I'm sorry for what you have to endure. Using his sleeves to wipe the sweat off his face, he sighed. You'll have to hide that seal though I don't think you can from your parents, though. Oh, Naruto touched the mark on her forehead, the color of dried blood, it took on the shape of what seemed to be a triangle with a circle inside, a line slashing over both. Does it look weird? She smiled sheepishly, her muscles seemed to have loosened. He chuckled, ruffling and not minding her damp hair. I'd say it looks unusual. Same thing as weird, Gigi. He laughed now, a fond smile on his face. You should call me that more. It makes me feel human. She raised a brow, before grinning. I'll insult you all I want then. Ah, no, Naruto, I've never said that. Naruto. Wake up. Said girl shot straight up from her desk, noticed that she was in the classroom, and laughed as she scratched the back of her head sheepishly. Sorry sensei. The class giggled and laughed at her antics, while the man only sighed. It's only been half a year since you entered the academy, yet you're already slacking off. He frowned, I do hope you're preparing properly for the exams, Naruto. But sensei, she whined, that's like another 6 months away. Her classmates hooted and shouted in agreement, Mika and Kippei the loudest in particular. It had been that long, and Jiraiya has yet to return, the mission had a few miscalculations, and his spy network had a few problems. He should be back around now, though, to Naruto and the Hokage's relief. Quiet. The Chunin yelled, silencing the room immediately. Yes, it's another 6 months away, but it is what decides your future holds. The better you do, the more likely you'll get a better team sensei. Hi, sensei. She sat back down, yawning. Kakashi stared at her in disdain. Do you not care about your grades? Of course I do, she began, drawing a stickman figure. But I'm not worried, I'm confident I'll get a good score on the exams, even without trying to shove books in my head. She then proceeded to add hair, a mustache, and a beard. To him, they looked like mere scribbles. Well, at least your drawings are getting decent. He wrinkled his nose, still sucks though. Why, thank you. Naruto rolled her eyes, before writing an arrow and the jerk sitting next to me next to the drawing. Kakashi scoffed and ruined her masterpiece by scribbling all over it. You're welcome. She was about to shout in indignation, but noticed the teacher glaring at them. Plastering a smile, she waved and pretended to write notes vigorously into her book. Peeking up, she noticed he sighed and went back to the blackboard and turned to Kakashi. You nearly got us in trouble. I nearly got you in trouble. He would have known you were partly to blame anyways. But to him it would look like you're the one pestering me, wouldn't it? That's the truth, after all. Naruto glared, but he did have a point. She sighed, before her mind drifted back to the seal she had hidden underneath some bandage, saying it was a cut she got from training alone. But she needed to find a new cover-up soon, a cut would heal, and that would also mean she'll lose her excuse for hiding the mark from her parents. What should I say then? She slowly frowned in thought, before rubbing the bridge of her nose tiredly. I've been doing too much thinking. She stared outside through the window at the birds. Lucky them. Flying so freely without a care in the world, she scowled. Well, I'm cooped up here drowning in my thoughts. Everyone, come down here and work on your bunshin. I hope you all were paying attention. Naruto frowned. Bunshin. She raised her hand. Sensei. He raised a brow. Yes, Naruto. I know how to do the cloning jutsu, but I have some conditions that prevent me from actually doing it. Kakashi turned back to her, silently questioning. Now that he looked back on it, she always did use the solid versions of the bunshin jutsu. He watched the teacher's bemused face, before sighing. Sensei, her version's different from the normal one. I've seen it many times before, and as much as I hate to admit it, it's a lot more effective. He grumbled, wondering why he was even helping her explain. She probably picked it up outside of Konoha. The girl whipped her head back at him with wide eyes, before a grin settled on her face. He turned away stubbornly, glaring at nothing in particular as the Chunin nodded. Very well, Naruto, come down and show us your bunshin jutsu first. Hopping down, though a little pressured by the stares and whispers, she stopped next to the desk so both the class and the teacher can't see her properly. A grin stretched her face and she formed her favorite hand seal. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. The man's eyes widened. Wait. 2 clones appeared in front of her, perfect and in different poses from their original. The teacher's mouth opened and closed, not quite able to say anything as he walked up to them. He reached a hand out to their shoulder, before recoiling in shock. That's how do you know the Kage Bunshin? He took a deep breath, trying to get in his head that a 5-year-old was able to conduct such a jutsu. It's forbidden for the amount of chakra it needs, Naruto. Yeah, that's why I can only do about 10. She laughed. For some reason, I can't perform the basic clone technique. Well, she can because of the numerous chakra exercises she practiced, but it wouldn't last very long. Does Hokage-sama know about this? Now there were small, confused whispers from the students as they watched their teacher internally freak out. Yep. Alright, dispel your clones and get back to your seat. Naruto was about to shrug and do so, before a brilliant plan popped in her mind. The clones seemed to understand the smirk she sent them, before one stood behind the other. The copy at the front popped away, and the cloud covered the leftover clone and creator. Wasting no time, the original Naruto disappeared via body flicker, leaving her copy behind to parade as her. Nonchalantly, it bounced back to her desk. Naruto smirked as she landed right outside her classroom. Crouching, she crawled outside so she wouldn't be seen through the windows and headed for the exit of the building. It's official, she thought with a smirk, I'm a genius. She frowned, jumping over the gates as she pondered on what to do. If I go too far, the clone I left would pop away. Blinking, she grinned, of course. Training. She headed for the river, making sure she avoided being found out by using various illusions over herself, of course. Naruto rolled up her knee-length pants once reaching there and hopped onto the water surface. I might as well run the whole line. And, of course, with a little trick. Applying chakra to also her muscles, she took off. Halfway through her training, Naruto noticed a familiar brown-haired boy walking not too far away from her and her brows furrowed in confusion. What was Genma doing there? Remembering that the trio she was familiar with wasn't at class, she grinned. They're skipping now, are they? She hopped off of her jogging route and landed soundlessly on the grass. I guess I'll see where he's going. Most likely to meet up with Shizuka and Mika. Sneakily she followed him, eyeing the alley walls she now crept in warily before jumping on them. Just where is he going? Maybe it was the three's own little hideout of sorts that she shouldn't enter. Well, I followed him all the way here, so I don't think I can back out now, she reasoned and continued to crawl on the wall. A grin full of mischief crept up her face. Maybe she can mess with him a little bit. Climbing up higher in precaution, she took out a crumpled note in her pocket. Grabbing a pencil from her pouch, she crossed out the previous words before writing, "I'm watching you." Crushing it to a ball, she threw it to his feet hard. He started, looking back before down at it and picking it up. He stared at it, glanced back once more, before unfolding it. He whipped his head back and looked around, eyes wide. Naruto grinned, knowing that he wouldn't look up at her. Genma frowned, shrugged, and tossed the note away nonchalantly. Naruto felt slightly nostalgic as she stalked the boy. She would skip school and walk around town freely back when she was in her academy all the time. Though not so often, Shikamaru, Choji and Kiba would go with her when they were bored enough. A memory of the three brought a small laugh out of her lips. Despite it not being very loud, Genma heard it sharp and clear, and his head shot up. His eyes found her wide ones and blinked in surprise, before a smirk was on his lips. "Oops," was all she could utter. "I never knew you stalked people, Naruto." Blushing in embarrassment, she glared weakly. "I'm not stalking you. I was just wondering what you were up to." "Well, I can see you're up on a wall," he said incredulously. "How did you get up there?" "Oh, this." Naruto grinned proudly, "Ain't it awesome? I can walk up here as long as her feet lost contact with the wall with a loud pop. Jaya." The grunt of pain was released, but it wasn't hers. Realizing she wasn't hurt as she expected, Naruto peeked, before her blue eyes widened immediately. She all but jumped off of Genma, before going in a frenzy. "God Genma, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to fall on you." She fussed all over him and helped the boy sit up. "For a small girl, you sure are heavy." "Blame gravity." She growled, cheeks flaming. "I'm kidding." He rolled his eyes and shoved his hand in front of her expectantly. Naruto took a moment to understand. "Oh." She grabbed it and pulled him up to his feet. "Sorry." "It's fine," he sighed, before patting the dust off his pants. "So are you coming with me?" "Yeah. I don't have anything else to do." Naruto grinned, hopping next to him. "Where are you heading?" "Nowhere in particular. I'm just killing time." "Eh? I thought you were going to meet up with the others." "You mean Shizuka and Mika?" At her nod, he waved his hand dismissively. "Mika's sick and I think Shizuka has some family business or something." "Oh. I thought they were skipping like us." "Anyways, come on." They had settled on a bridge over the river where not many people cross. "You're going to buy your lunch?" Naruto blinked as she looked up from her wallet before smiling at Genma. "Yeah, my parents had an early mission so they couldn't make my lunch. And they said that everything but the microwave and fridge in the kitchen is off limits." As she skipped to the convenience store, Naruto pondered. The clone she made hadn't popped away despite her being so far, she knew that because she didn't have a memory rush. Maybe she had pushed in more chakra in that clone. Shrugging, she put on a henge and entered the shop. When she got back, Genma raised a brow before sighing exasperatedly. "Weren't you only going to buy an onigiri and drink?" Naruto held a rice ball, a packet of chips, 2 cans of grape-flavored Fanta, and 2 melon pans in both arms. "I thought you'd want to share," she pouted. "You don't want any? I bought the drink for you too." "I like grape." "Great." She beamed, before putting everything down and throwing him his can, which he caught with ease. "Nice catch." He merely nodded, before pointedly staring at something behind her. She followed his gaze, before scrambling to her feet to catch her rolling away drink. It fell in the river with a plop. She jumped over, making Genma's eyes round in shock. "Oi." He jumped and leaned over the bridge's red handle, before letting a breath out in relief. "You should tell me you can walk on water before you do something like that." Sorry about that. But you should have warned me earlier rather than just staring." When they settled down, Naruto suddenly grinned. At Genma's raised brow, she explained. "You know, you're a lot like Kakashi, though a whole lot nicer and stuff." "How am I supposed to take that as?" "Compliment. You're much better than him in terms of sociality." He hummed monotonously, staring at nothing in particular, before saying, "You're pretty good with words. You don't sound like a 5-year-old at all." "Thank you." Naruto grinned, biting into her onigiri. "You're around him a lot. Doesn't his personality bother you?" Gagahi, she asked through a full mouth. He nodded, before she gulped down her food. "Sometimes, but when I retort back so does he, so it's all good. Better than when he's all silent and gloomy, you know." "You're thoughtful." "I know, I'm a kind soul, aren't I?" she boasted, laughing at herself. He nodded, almost as if because he was expected to. Resting his head on his palm, elbow on knee, he stared at her and looked to be in deep thought. "What?" I've thought about this before, but you should be glad you're wordy. Naruto's brows furrowed in confusion, and she asked, why? Because you would have seemed like an idiot if you weren't. They got back when lunchtime had just started, and Naruto looked for her clone while staying out of the other student's sight. There I am. She saw it head for the toilets. Perfect timing. She body flickered at the corner nearby it, looked around, and entered in after the clone. She dispelled it, saw flashes of Kakashi stuffing insults to her head, and stormed off. Naruto ran into the boys' bathroom door and fell back, clutching her nose in pain. What are you doing, Kamaboko? Her eyes snapped open at the nickname and voice, groaning at the sight of the boy who she was just cursing a mere moment ago. Kakashi. Don't just suddenly open the door like that. He held out his hand for her to grab it reluctantly. It's your fault for not seeing where you're going, Kachi. His eyes flashed at the blood gushing out from her wound, and they looked directly in hers with anger and worry. Was he worried for her? Don't be so reckless, Kachi. Her eyes widened at the familiar insult. Slapping his hand away, she snarled, don't say that. She stood up, glared at him once more, and stalked off. Kakashi raised a brow. Did he strike a nerve? By using a name like Kachi? What's up with her? Elsewhere, Naruto sulked on a tree branch, using a kunai to scratch marks on the bark. Knowing him, the blonde was sure he would start using the same nickname because it affected her so much. Naruto? A quiet girl's voice startled her. She moved behind her and looked down. Oh, Shizuka. I thought you were absent today. Yeah, but my father made me go after we settled some things. What did Genma tell you? That I would look like an idiot if it weren't for my great vocabulary. That's not true. Oh yeah? Then would you hesitate there, huh? Naruto grumbled, I know you agree with him. The Hyuga hummed thoughtfully before staring up at the younger girl's face. But still, she began, took a small chunk of her rice with her chopsticks. It's rare for him to tease someone, Shizuka didn't elaborate and chomped on her lunch. Huh? The blonde scoffed, he seems like the type to bully someone with just a few words. No, usually he would just listen and not talk to the people he likes or cares about. What if he doesn't like me? What if deep down inside, he actually hates me? No, that's impossible. We all including the class think of you as a little sister. Kippei seems to like you since you help him and make a set pranks on the teacher. She smiled softly, I think Genma just treats you differently because he couldn't help it. Naruto blushed, looking down at her fidgeting fingers. Oh, she trailed off, before wearing a thankful grin, you're like an awesome older sis, Shizuka-chan. The girl giggled, bringing her hand up and signaled for the other to come down. Curiously, Naruto obliged, jumping down using chakra to cushion her fall. I've always wanted a little sister, the Hyuga admitted softly, and the blue eyes widened as she planted a kiss on the blonde's forehead. Naruto touched it and gazed up at Shizuka's rare-wide smile. Mika growled, there's a pervert spying on the women's side. What? Naruto stared up at the tall man in absolute shock. She had recognized that white hair outside the bathhouse and knew who it was. The location another dead giveaway. Oh, so now he appears. She sighed, looking back at her older friend apologetically. You can go home first. Naruto, you know that person? Sadly, yes I do. Oh well, good luck with him. The blonde forced a laugh as she waved her friend off, yeah, see you tomorrow. She turned to the man peeking through a hole on the wood. Hey, you. She growled, making him snap to her in surprise. What do you think you're doing? I'm a girl who looks like Minato and Kushina put together, eh? Jiraiya smirked, so you're the little squirt the old man was desperate for me to see. Naruto didn't say anything, eyeing him warily. He chuckled, rubbing his chin thoughtfully as he surveyed her. The similarities are shocking. Are you their daughter? I never knew they had. No, I'm not. She rushed, before tugging at his clothes, come on. We have to get to Jiji's office quickly. Alright, no need to be so anxious. He raised a brow, there's nothing wrong with you is there? Yes, there is something horribly wrong with me. So come on, you pervy sage. Wah. No time to explain, Iro-senin. Naruto grinned as she walked in front of him, not showing her old mentor the pure joy she was experiencing at seeing him again. Ah. Kids have no respect these days, do they? She raised a brow, would you take so long anyways? Classified, especially from brats like you, kid. The name's Naruto. HMPH. How would I know that? My name's Jiraiya, the Great Toad Sage. He had already pulled away from her and, before she knew it, gotten into his dramatic pose, arms raised and fingers outstretched. Remember the name and remember it well. Yeah, Iro-senin, I already knew all that. You're never going to drop that nickname, are you? What? I don't think quite got what you're saying. Jiraiya's brows furrowed, eyes narrowing in shock. What I'm saying, Jiraiya, is that this 5-year-old girl you see in front of you is actually or would have been a 17-year-old lady, born 9 years into the future. The Sandaimi's sober face was unrevealing as he continued. She knows about your old students, Konan, Yahiko, and Nagato. The white-haired man ended through clenched teeth before his wide eyes were on Naruto. Why no, how do you know them? They weren't dead, two of them were not dead when I first met them. She replied, previous cheerfulness gone and replaced by regret. Yahiko was there, but he wasn't alive. Yahiko? Jiraiya took a deep breath. Nagato used his eyes on him, didn't he? Yeah, the 6 paths of pain. The girl's lips were set in a grim line, her eyes averted from his painful gaze for a moment. She gave a small smile. But if we hurry, I think we can save him. We can save Yahiko. How? Hiruzen spoke this time, being more informed with the topic. As you may have known, Rain has been taken over by Handsome a while back. But his position is being intimidated by the group called Akatsuki. Ah, I've heard of them. Don't tell me that those 3. Naruto inclined her head once, exactly. Nagato, Konan, and Yahiko are in the organization, and Yahiko's the leader, though Nagato's the actual head of it in terms of power. Yahiko is what motivates the group, you could say. She looked down at the note in her hands which contained reminders of what she needed to explain. Handsome viewed the Akatsuki as a threat to his status as leader of a megacorps and schemed with Konoha's route to eliminate them. Claiming to want to discuss peace, Handsome lured Nagato, Yahiko, and Konan to an ambush. They did as he planned, although I'm sure they had suspicions. He forced Nagato to choose between killing Yahiko or Konan, and, not wanting to force Nagato to make the choice, Yahiko impaled himself with a kunai that Nagato was expected to use. Yahiko's last words were telling Nagato to survive because he believed in what Jiraiya said, that Nagato would become the world savior. Naruto sighed, subconsciously rubbing her forehead or rather, the seal on it. This incident, I think, is what warped Nagato's judgment and view of peace. She grimly took in her future mentor's grief-stricken expression before attempting to fix the dark atmosphere. Don't be like that, Iro-senin. She gave a small but meaningful smile. This is why I'm here, aren't I? Think of me as what do you call him again? The guy who comes in to suddenly fix and make what seemingly unsolvable situation fine and dandy in a story. The Hokage chuckled, Deus Ex Machina, Naruto. He watched his former student and smiled. She's right, Jiraiya. Compared to entering a state of depression, finding a way to save those 3 would be a better action, would it not? You're right, sensei, Naruto. Relief had shown through her grin as the time traveler said cheekily, I always am, Iro-senin. How can I not be? Her expression melted into a more mature smile, pull yourself together, alright. He gratefully ruffled her spiky bangs, this brat he muttered fondly. The mission would have to be done immediately, but it would be suspicious if Naruto left the village with someone as internationally famous as Jiraiya without an explanation, so we'll wait a week. That way you can clear up people's confusion and guesses. I'm sure that the fact I assigned this mission to you would surely rouse shock. I know a story you could use if asked, and for it to work you would have to bring Uzumaki Kishino along. Huh? Naruto frowned, why? Just say to any inquirers that you both happen to have a skill that proves useful for the mission. They can't push any further into that, this is classified, and if they want to try squeezing out answers, they can come to me of course, I won't reveal anything. Naruto furrowed her brows worriedly. Would it work? An academy student, 4-year-old, no less, is going out on a mission outside of Konoha with the legendary Toad Sage Jiraiya. That had probably never happened before. Her thoughts distracted her focus on the chakra gluing her feet to the branch, and Naruto noticed a split second too late that she was about to fall. A curse escaped her lips as she tried to maneuver herself in the air to land to her feet. Softening the impact of her landing with chakra, she noticed the Hotaki duo's alerted faces and apologized sheepishly. Sorry, it won't happen again, I'll make sure of it. What's on your mind, Naruto? Usually you would have been able to catch yourself before reaching anywhere near the ground. Tsukumo frowned slightly in concern. Oh, no, it's just well, she had to tell him sooner than later, right? Biting her lip, her eyes flickered to Kakashi and kept herself from cursing when he noticed. He scowled in obvious irritation. Is it something you can't say in front of me? No, it's not like that, it's just that you would surely blow up with envy if I did that, she thought bitterly. Sighing, she shrugged, the boy was going to find out anyways. Actually, I'll have to leave Konoha for a while, a classified mission, Tsukumo-sensei. Naruto could tell Kakashi was gobsmacked. Tsukumo was just as astonished, before his face hardened. Naruto, did Hokage-sama really hand that to you? Going out of Konoha to complete a mission is surely above C rank, which are for genins and up only. His eyes narrowed, it's dangerous. Wait, so academy students do to your ranks? Well, that would make sense seeing as it was the time of war, the toughest one yet. Yes, I'm assigned to that mission, sensei. What about your parents? What did they have to say about it? The Jiraiya-sensei and my mother will be with me, so my father will be alright with it, I think. I haven't spoken to them yet. Jiraiya-sensei. The man repeated in shock, do you mean Jiraiya-sama of the legendary Sannin? Yeah. Why are you of all people going? Kakashi snapped bitterly. I have something important that is needed for this mission. What it is or what it's going to be used for is classified. Tsukumo frowned at his son in disapproval to his tone, before sighing. Really, when is the mission? In 6 days. He nodded with a smile on his face. We have 6 days to train then. Alright, you two, run on the whole river. Kakashi scowled in clear displeasure and shot Naruto a dirty look as if to say it's your fault. After the endless efforts of Kakashi trying to shove the blonde off their course, he and Naruto reached the end of their incredibly long warm-up. Their sensei was nowhere in sight, so they began sparring on the grass. Trading numerous punches and kicks, the fight ended with Kakashi being the winner this time, and he got off her back triumphantly. Naruto scoffed, patting off the dirt on her white shirt and orange shorts. You've gotten a lot better than last time, she said, going to the river to wash off the dirt and sweat on her face. Kakashi followed suit and splashed some of the cold water again to his swollen cheek. Naruto had given him one heck of a punch. Are you sure you weren't just getting weaker? Shut up. I'm improving heaps and bounds, you know. You just happen to pick up on stuff a little better than I do. He huffed, whatever you say, Kamaboko. Scarecrow, she retorted back. Geez, you sure aren't cute. Don't say that as if you're older than me. Naruto stuck her tongue out at him, skipping off. Sensei's not here even though it's been quite a while, so I'm going to buy some ice cream. What flavor, Scarecrow? Well, I'm going too. Kakashi glared at her, you'd probably going to try skipping like you do at the academy anyways. Eh? You noticed? Of course. You did it too many times that I find it hard to not. He sighed and shoved his hands in the pockets of his black shorts. I'm surprised the teacher hasn't. He was probably paying attention to the other students who had problems. Naruto grinned, slipping into her habit of folding her arms behind her head. Kippei especially. The silver-haired boy scoffed. He's an idiot, so of course he'd fold behind. Hey, he's stronger than you. If you got time to think about his weaknesses, why don't you think of ways to get some muscle, Her comment earned her a bop in the head. Ow. Don't go violent on me. Tsukumo readjusted the plastic bags in his hands again before looking up from his grocery list. Brows furrowing in confusion, he looked from side to side. Where are those two? Naruto twitched on the sofa at the sound of the doorbell. Must be him. I'll get it. She said subconsciously, before remembering that no one was home at the moment. Right, stupid me, she muttered, rolling her eyes as the door opened with a click. Yo, brat. A bright smile reached her face as she stared up at her previous, or should I say future, mentor, all the while enjoying the nostalgia coming from the way he addressed her. Hey, Hiro-sennin. Naruto grinned, raising a brow. You're late. Let me guess, you ran into a lady in distress and decided to help her. Oh, how did you know? He ruffled her spiky bangs, apparently not noticing her scowl. Well, she was elated when I tried my best to please her. Naruto inwardly sighed, trust this man to try and take advantage of a 5-year-old's ignorance. Yeah, whatever. Come on. We're wasting time as we speak. She griped, pointing at her stomach. Sheesh, you remind me too much of Kushina-chan, you know. He whined, letting himself get pulled by the girl who was half his height. So pushy and loud. With her right brow twitching irritably, she grumbled, like you're any different. Climbing up on a chair by the dining table, she molded chakra and pulled up her shirt enough to show the seal. Jiraiya's eyes widened before narrowing, and he looked up at the girl's face solemnly. You were Jinchuriki. Yeah, Naruto sheepishly rubbed the back of her neck, and you probably guessed it already, but I'm the host of the Nine-Tailed Fox. He sighed and studied the seal on top of the Haki Fuin. So you really are Kushina's daughter. I've already known Minato was your father and believed that your mother was her, but well, the seal just blew away any doubts I had. Yup. Hey, Hiro-sennin. He grunted. Did dad make a jutsu called the Rasengan yet? It's a jutsu where lots of chakra is charged and packed into a ball. No, I've never seen or heard that jutsu before. He smirked, getting out a paper and pencil to write some notes. Why? You want to become the creator of that jutsu before him? Not necessarily, but it would make things easier if I could use it at any time without getting questioned by him or anyone who knows it. He hummed thoughtfully, before standing up from his kneeling position. Anyways, I think it would be pretty easy to get rid of this parasite once we… Really? Naruto shot up, clutching onto his vest with glimmering hope in her eyes. Calm down. I wasn't finished, he sighed, a slight troubled expression on his face as he looked down on his paper. It seems that though the jutsu is pretty basic, there are locks, you could say, around it. The girl flew to the sofa and thrashed her limbs in frustration. Gah. Why do locks always come my way? But, one corner of Jiraiya's lips quirked into a smirk, the problem will be fixed by a spark of an Uzumaki's chakra. Naruto sat up in a jolt, her eyes sparkling again, that means I can do it by myself. No, that's impossible now since too much time has passed. The user's chakra must have mixed with yours, and even if it's very little, it makes your chakra useless to this seal's security. Naruto glared at him in accusation. Hey, it's not my fault, something went wrong on a mission, and I can't just up and leave, can I? He bopped her head. Back on topic, we can't use your chakra anymore. Wait, Naruto blinked, brows furrowing, so in other words, I have to find another Uzumaki and use their chakra? Yes, and the only person we can count on now is my mom. The girl clenched her jaw. So I need to show this and the Jinchuriki seal to her? The two rushed to the Hokage, hoping to reach the office before Naruto's parents do. Luckily, they arrived roughly 15 minutes earlier than their meeting with the village leader was. They knocked first before entering, and Hiruzen looked up in surprise. Jiraiya promptly told him what he discovered, and the older man nodded. I was planning on letting her find out about Naruto's status as a time traveler anyways, the Hokage said, sighing as he leaned back on his chair. The girl blinked, what? You both need to learn how to control the QB, isn't that right? Realization dawned to her, and Naruto nodded reluctantly. Then you two should help each other. Jiraiya rubbed the back of his neck, that's true. But how can she help? He stared down at the blonde, one eye twitching. She's a little runt now. Can't hurt a fly, can't she? But the getting you a gender change is the least I can do, you perverted. Hiruzen coughed into his hand. Physically, yes, Naruto is incapable of attacking a demon. However, her mental state is an entirely different matter. Yeah? Naruto glared. Though I look like this, I'm still my 16-year-old self in my head. So she'll be able to get Kushina to remove the enemy's seal and gain full control of the QB. Naruto nodded. A moment passed before a troubled expression crossed her face, and it didn't go unnoticed by the two other occupants of the room. Naruto. Jiraiya raised a brow, waiting for her to respond. It hasn't crossed my mind with all that happened recently, but she sighed, combing a hand through her bangs. Ever since QB first said what he thought was going on with the seal the Uzushio Kunoichi hit me with, he hasn't said a word to me. Naruto frowned and looked up when she noticed Jiraiya had walked to the desk and leant against it. I'm guessing the reason why is that the seal keeping him in got stronger, since I'm back to being 5 again, so I'll have some problems trying to talk to him. She paused for a moment. And how are my mother and I going to enter each other's mindscapes? You in jutsu, remember? Jiraiya chuckled, I thought you were proficient in seals. I'm getting rusty. Besides, Naruto scowled in annoyance, you didn't teach me all that much about it. I was your teacher. You were my mentor, I was your apprentice. She rolled her eyes, but to be honest, it was more like the other way around. What are you talking about? The two had clearly forgotten the Hokage, Jiraiya being outraged and Naruto being too amused. You made my little Gama-chan wallet flat. Any little coin I feed it goes straight in your hands. You're exaggerating. Enough. The Hokage exasperatedly put a stop to their short-lived argument. Naruto, you'll have more than enough time to tell Jiraiya all about your life in the mission, it will last a couple of months, after all. Right. And Jiraiya, I expect you to brush her up on Fuinjutsu. Understand? The man shrugged. Yes, sensei. I thought she told you to before. Hiruzen said as he sighed, sipping some of his cold tea. Minato's eyes flicked over to Kushina's before he gazed down to the sitting Hokage. I should have known she'd lie and leave the most troublesome things to me, the aging man grumbled. His eyes sharpened then, the atmosphere growing even more sober and tense as the couple waited for him to speak. The Sarutobi weaved his hands together to his mouth, eyes watching their faces. Kushina will be accompanying Naruto and Jiraiya on a mission in rain. Minato tensed visibly, eyes narrowing. Naruto. She's still. Yes, I do realize that she's still a student of the academy, the Hokage turned over to the shocked woman, but she's much needed. And about that girl's safety, Kushina and Jiraiya will be more than enough. The blonde balled his hands to fists. I know they're strong, however he bit back from continuing, remembering that this was their village leader. His brows knit closer together anxiously as he delved deeper into his worries and thoughts, forcing Kushina to try to calm his nerves. She only brought her hand to his arm soothingly, and though that action was small, it was meaningful. Eyes of deep blue shone in determination as they looked up at him, strengthening her words. Minato, I wouldn't let anything happen to our daughter, you hear me? He nodded, and regret reflected in his eyes for inadvertently doubting his girlfriend's abilities. Kushina smiled forgivingly, bringing her hand down to squeeze his larger one. Don't worry, Jiraiya will also be with us, remember? He would see to it that a maiden's well-being is at its finest. The meeting carried on for a while longer until they were dismissed at sunset. The couple walked hand in hand down the streets. Minato watched Kushina with a fond smile, even as she talked about the most insignificant of things. He watched the way her fiery red hair swayed gently in the breeze, the way her eyes reflect the warm colors of the slowly setting sun and the now lit lanterns around them. "Hey Minato." He noticed her gaze was elsewhere and followed it. His eyes found an accessory shop. "Mind if we go take a look?" He chuckled, giving her hand a light squeeze. "You know I want. Let's see what they have." The hair ornaments were stunning, and the man could see sparkles in her eyes as Kushina marveled at them. With a smile, he picked up the one she had been watching so keenly. "Do you like this?" The piece was small, simple yet beautiful hair clip. The ornament was a sapphire gem embedded in the front of the silver pin, and upon closer inspection a word had been engraved on the metal piece. She tipped her head down in answer to his question. "Happiness." She smiled up at him. "At first, it reminded me of your eyes, but after a while I thought Naruto's blue doe-like eyes suited better." "I guess you're right. It'll be nice to buy it for her." He leaned slightly towards the display table and shifted his head to see his girlfriend. "What about you?" She grinned. "Well, why don't you pick for me?" "Kushina," he whined, "you know very well how bad my sense of style is." "Hey, I want you to choose, so that's fine, isn't it?" Alright. His blue eyes nervously looked around for something that would suit her tastes and match her red hair. "Hey there, dear customers." A cheerful teen girl, most likely 16, smiled at them. "We not only have hair accessories, but necklaces, bracelets, and anklets." Kushina hummed, her index finger tapping her chin thoughtfully. "I've always been wanting for a new bracelet." The teen grinned as she pushed out a smaller display table, and on top of it was crowded with beautiful bracelets. Some were colorful beads or shells, simple bangles most likely coated with gold and silver, and the one that caught Minato's eye the most was a charm bracelet. The charm bracelet had both a sapphire and scarlet gem linked on the chains. In between those two was a silver heart, like the shape of the link attaching it to the bracelet. Minato shifted slightly to see if Kushina had her eyes on it as well, and sure enough, she was mesmerized by it. The girl giggled. "That suits you too perfectly, I think." "Then it's settled," Minato said, a soft grin on his face. He dug out some ryo for the bracelet. "I'm choosing this one for you, Kushina." The red-haired woman beamed up at her boyfriend. "Welcome home." Naruto smiled warily at her parents before beeping her head to the side at her mother. "You seem really happy. Did something good happen?" She thought she was going to get questioned and scolded for accepting the mission. Kushina merely grinned goofily, and Naruto took notice of the charm bracelet on her left wrist. "Whoa, that's pretty. Right?" The lady draped an arm around Minato's shoulders. "We also bought a little something for you, too, Naruto." When Kushina whipped out a small pink packet, Naruto instinctively caught it. Minato smiled. "It's a hair clip, so it won't get in the way or damage during training and missions." His face grew a little sober then. "Speaking of missions. We'll talk it over at dinner, alright?" Kushina quickly cut him off as she watched Naruto open the small gift and stared at the pin in awe. "Right. Hey, Ka-chan, 2-chan, may I put this on now?" "Of course. Why do you have to ask?" The mother grinned, pushing the girl to the bathroom where the mirrors were. "Come on, I'll put it on for you." Sighing, Minato went to the kitchen and prepared to cook their meal. Sat on Minato's lap, Naruto fingered her bandage wrap on her forehead, brows furrowed in thought. Both parents noticing her agitation, they frowned. "What's the matter, Naruto?" Kushina asked, scooting down from the sofa and crouched in front of them. "Najimi told me that they wouldn't know it, but what if they did?" Shaking her head, she smiled. "I'm just a little upset that I have to keep this thing on longer, since the scratch got an infection before or something." She curled her lips down in disgust. "The scar looks bad." "I see." Kushina cradled the girl's face with her hands, smiling in pity. "Make sure to wash that wound properly, alright?" Minato had a bemused frown. "But that's about it." Naruto grinned, though inwardly she was weeping. Time sure flies by quickly. She loved every second she had with her mother and father. Can't time go by slower? Naruto smiled a small smile as her mother tucked her in bed. 2-chan was angry before, wasn't he? No, Kushina smiled back at her as she got down from the chair and knelt on the floor. She rested her chin on her palm, leaning onto the bed. He's just a little upset that he wasn't allowed to know more about the mission since it's, well, classified. Okay, the girl yawned, turning over on her stomach, folding her arms under her head and on the pillow. Ka-chan. Yes. Naruto pursed her lips for a moment, hesitating, until she shook her head. It's nothing. Her brow rose, but Kushina didn't press on. Alright then. She sighed with a smile. But remember that you can always talk to me about anything, alright? Yeah, thank you mama. Kushina could tell that Naruto was slipping away into dreamland, and so she soundlessly waited for her to sleep. Once the girl's breathing became heavier, the mother gently pulled the blanket up and combed her fingers gently through the girl's bangs. The frown settled on Kushina's face at the sight of the dark crimson mark on her forehead. Sighing, the woman got up, stretching her legs lightly. She stared at the girl's sleeping face, and a sad smile reached the Uzumaki's lips. I wonder when the day will come when you tell us what's clouding your mind, Naruto. Naruto won't be here for the next couple of weeks, so when she comes back make sure to help her with what you've learned while she was gone. The teacher said with a forced smile, stacking up his papers. Hi, sensei, the students chorused. Kakashi glared down at his notes. Today, Naruto was only preparing for her mission. He was glad that she wasn't boasting about it and a little unnerved since that was unlike her. Huffing, he scratched more writing into his book angrily, a heavy scowl set on his face. What was so different about a stupid girl like her, and he refused to acknowledge that she was pretty skilled in the ninja arts. He was just as, if not more, talented, so why was Naruto getting all the special treatment? Kakashi let out a harsh sigh that was muffled by his mask and set his pencil down. He glared at the window, resting his cheek on his palm. In his head, he listed off the bad points of the girl, with the teacher's boring words completely hovering over his head. Of course, the idiot was too loud, that was one, very annoying aspect of her. 2. She ate ramen too much. 3. She kept praising ramen too much. 3. She constantly boasted about her cup ramen stack. He realized that the more he thought about her, the more agitated and annoyed he got. So Kakashi settled on pondering what he lacked. One thing the boy learned full well, Naruto was a chakra and stamina powerhouse. Her punches and hits after a few training sessions, she most likely worked on it, got much stronger as well. As much as he hated to admit it, she had the perfect qualities as a shinobi. And, like a kid being envious of the toy another kid got, Kakashi wanted those qualities. It wasn't like he was incompetent for his age. No, it was the complete opposite, and he was proud of that until she came along. His chakra was enough for maybe an average 12-year-old, but Naruto now had probably as much as an average shounin's chakra. What made Kakashi feel worse about it was that she had originally as much chakra as he did now, she had worked harder than him for it, even going as far as to sneak out at night to train. Unexplainable emotions that irritatingly clouded up in his chest were new to him. It grew stronger at the memory of his father ruffling Naruto's hair proudly after she managed to complete an exceptionally hard training method. Kakashi had to fight back the urge to march over and pull Naruto away from him, and when he and Tsukumo got home, the boy would always go to the shower, not speaking a word. And, all because of Naruto, he and his father's relationship wasn't going too well. Tsukumo had tried talking to him over dinner about how his day was, but Kakashi was too irritated from their training sessions to say anything other than it's going fine, father. The man never stopped asking, but it was obvious he knew the answer every time. Eventually through his thinking, Kakashi wondered on a question. He tried squashing and stuffing it away in the farthest back of his mind, but the thought kept drifting its way back up. What if he told Naruto what was happening? How it was all her fault for being just there. That if she hadn't come to Konohagakure, everything would have gone all smoothly. That she shouldn't be here. She didn't belong here. Everything wasn't making sense with her being here. The bell rang, signaling the end of the last class of the day. He got up from his chair, shoved his books in his bag, and left the room. What if he told her, Namikaze Naruto, that she was an outsider? Naruto packed the last of her kunai in her bag and zipped it up before throwing it on her shoulders. She walked away from her bed to her shelf. On it, other than the books and scrolls lays the clip she had gotten from her parents and a hit I ate her forehead protector. She smiled at the black straps tucked underneath the scratched and chipped metal. Picking it up, she tied it around her forehead, nostalgia wafting over her at the feel of the cloth behind the cold plate. Sighing, she took the pin and went to the mirror hung on her wall. Flipping it on to hold her bangs to the right side, much like her mother, Naruto grinned. At its reflection. The sapphire was absolutely beautiful, and she loved the little word engraved on it. Her old, or future in this case, clothes had been tucked in a drawer for when she's old enough to fit in them. As much as she missed the orange and black outfit, it wasn't the time to wear them yet. But that didn't mean wearing something similar, did it? She and her mother had gone shopping for appropriate clothing, their destination was rain, after all. She had gotten a black waterproof jacket with a hood suited for shinobi, which had hidden pockets inside that was for packing kunai and shuriken so the weapons wouldn't be able to tear its way out of the cloth, so it would be a good idea to keep it unzipped during fights in case. Underneath she wore a normal dark red shirt. There were no patterns on it except for the black line spiral on the back. Naruto wore shorts that were black like her jacket, but she folded the ends. The reverse side of the clothing was orange, something Naruto had loved. For her feet she wore the standard blue ninja sandals. Ashina's voice came from her open door and she guessed that her mother was in the entrance hall. Naruto, are you ready? Jiraiya-sama's here. Hi. She jumped slightly to adjust the bag straps on her shoulders before running out. Kushina stared at her daughter in concern as they prepared their beds on the grass. Usually a little girl her age would be scared during the first night of their first mission. It was then she remembered that Naruto might have camped around before with her old sensei. She sighed, shaking her head. She needed to hurry, night would be coming soon, and they still had to prepare their dinners while there was still some of the sun's light. I hope it won't suddenly rain. Getting tents out is such a pain. Kushina grinned at her thought. I rhymed. Jiraiya nodded at their campsite. The sleeping bags were done, food out, trap set. Alright, I guess we should start planning on guarding shifts. Actually, Naruto said, a proud grin on her face, I have been practicing a way to make that easier. Oh? Yup. I've been making a clone and made it sat still while I slept at night for a week. The longest it can last now is about then. Her grin turned smug. 5 hours. Kushina's brows were raised. Amazing, she praised before glaring, but you're not supposed to train when it's time for you to sleep. But. Jiraiya sighed, waving a hand dismissively, she'll live even without a few hours of sleep. He then turned to the little girl. How long did it last on? The first night. Roughly 30 minutes. Naruto smirked, how's that? Great improvement. That method would be highly useful for this mission. Right? Right. I'm amazing. The blonde had a goofy grin on her face. You gotta teach me some awesome seals, Iro-senin. What you brat? Call me Jiraiya-sama. Nostalgia wept over her, making Naruto's grin widen even further. Iro-senin, Iro-senin. She stuck her tongue out, pervy sage. Kushina scoffed. Now you act your age. She muttered with an amused smile on her face. She shook her head and stretched. Well, I'm going to check around, so you two plan the mission out. Jiraiya and Naruto nodded, watching as the woman walked off. When should we show her that seal? Jiraiya said, pretending not to notice the quick change on the blonde's expression. Her grin swept off, replaced by a blank look. Of course, as soon as possible, she replied, placing a kunai under her pillow. Then I can finally take this mark off my forehead. Does it bother you? Oh, no, not really. She sighed, lying down on her sleeping bag. It just makes my mind fuzzy when I try to remember my important memories. Jiraiya raised a brow. Have you consulted the Hokage about that? Yep, he says it's because the seal takes extra care to the ones I remember the most vividly, as if I was there. Is that so? I never heard of a seal like that before. It seems like it's an ancient one. Ah, no wonder, Jiraiya rubbed the back of his neck. I'm not very knowledgeable in ancient Fuinjutsu. Say, when can I get a toad contract? When are you going to tell me about your life? When I get a toad contract. Jiraiya huffed before he started going off to his own sleeping bag. I mastered the sage mode when I was 16, so shouldn't it be natural to want to try mastering it at an earlier age? Her words made him stop in his tracks. Mastered. The sage mode. When she was 16. His mind was in jumbles. What? You heard me, she smirked, I mastered sage mode when I was 16. He massaged a bridge of his nose. Even so, it's much too early for you at your current age. Your mental state may be 17 or something, but right now you're a 5-year-old child. What? But. He drew his index finger to his mouth, silencing her. Your mother's coming. We never did plan the mission yet. Kushina heard her and set her hands on her hips. You haven't. She huffed. Honestly, did you two bicker again? Something like that, Jiraiya sighed. Well, I believe we should start heading to Rain immediately. Now that I think about it, you haven't really been told the details of the mission, have you? Yes. She hissed, crossing her arms over her chest. All I've been told is that we're heading to aim to stop an ambush. We're stopping Hanzo from ambushing Akatsuki, an organization that has been gaining power in Rain. Hanzo fears that the people will choose Akatsuki over himself as the ruler, Naruto said smoothly. Kushina blinked, surprised that she can understand all that before remembering the girl's abnormally high IQ. She nodded, taking in the information, so we're going to stop that from happening. Did the group Akatsuki request our help? Jiraiya answered this time. No, we're going there on our own accord. He sighed, rolling his shoulders. We're not sure how much money we'll get from this mission, but it would definitely give Konoha and AIM a better relationship. Hanzo's recently getting a bad reputation, after all. I see, so what's so important that an academy student has to come? And me? Surely there are stronger ninjas in the village. The reason, Kushina, is a seal. Naruto, show her now. When Naruto rolled up her jacket and shirt, the glowing seal made the mother's eyes widen in shock. They widened even further when she realized that there were not one, but 2 seals. Not only that, but underneath the second seal was one she would have least expected. With horror, Kushina realized that the first seal was the Haki Fuin. The ultimate seal used for the 9-tailed fox. I'm homo, right? Minato's happy mood went down the drain, his face drooped. They're off on a mission without me. He ruffled up his blonde hair and huffed. Throwing himself on the couch and landing on his stomach, he shoved his head in a square-shaped pillow and groaned. It was so lonely without those two's usual chattering and laughs. And this was going to continue for, at most, 2 months. By the time they're back, he'd be dead from severe depression. He whipped his head up, imagining himself with hollow cheeks, panda eyes, white hair and skin, and sticks as limbs made goosebumps all over Minato's skin. Mouth opening and closing with eyes wide with terror, the man mentally screamed. Kushina Naruto. And that's what's making me like this. Minato had been hanging on to Tsukumo's back pathetically and seemed to take no notice of the little boy nearby and his eye twitching. Save me, senpai. I don't want to be a zombie. What even if you confront me about it? A light bulb seemed to flicker in the silver-haired man's head as he stared down at his son. How about staying over at our place? You can stay as long as you want to until they come back. Wait, father, that's… Really? You're awesome. The best senpai in the world. Tsukumo chuckled. Having Minato at their apartment would light the place up a bit, especially their meals. Your family not being here sure changes you, huh? I thought you decided on being tough the moment you step out of your house. Yeah, but… Kakashi huffed, flopping down on the ground and plucking out some grass leaves. Who was this guy? Naruto's father. Did she come to Konoha with her family? He groaned at the thought of the blonde man staying at his home. Naruto. Kushina's voice shook, turning her head to Jiraiya. Oi, this isn't funny. What kind of sick prank is this? That seal is real, he said, face unrevealing. Naruto is here because of a Jutsu Kabuto, the future Orochimaru's apprentice, used on a dead whirlpool Kunoichi. He, using that technique, made her cast a seal that reduces the victim to a much younger age. Naruto spoke this time. I panicked and used my dad's technique to teleport away. But the Haratian seal mixed with that Kunoichi's seal, which is how I ended up in this time. That can't be. Kushina's deep blue eyes had moistened, tears ready to fall. I mean, does Minato know about this? Who else knows? Us three, Naruto answered, and the Hokage. 2chan doesn't know about me time traveling. So we Minato and I are really your parents? Naruto grinned. Yeah. Her eyes widened when Kushina kneeled down and hugged her tightly. Jiraiya watched the scene silently, eyes softening as the woman's tears streamed endlessly down her cheeks. She whispered her daughter's name repeatedly, hiccuping and sniffling. Did we put that on you? Naruto smiled a small smile, both eyes and nose stinging. She reached up her mother's back to clutch her clothes, vision becoming blurry with tears. Soundlessly, she listened as Kushina tried to form coherent words, apologizing for the Jinchuriki seal Naruto had. Naruto only hung tighter onto her mother, pain increasing as the woman went on with her apology. It's not 2chan or your fault, it's another man's. You both couldn't have done anything about it because it was too sudden. Speaking seemed to dissolve her will to refrain from crying, and she let out sobs. Her cry seemed to contain all the emotion she felt from meeting everyone again, the Sandaime, Jiraiya, her father and mother. The utter joy she felt in seeing the old man alive, seated in his desk and occasionally with the pipe in his mouth when he's on a break. The urge to cry at the pure nostalgia she felt from seeing Jiraiya, the pervert she grew to love like a father, peeking through a hole in the wooden wall fence at the women's bathhouse. The tightness she felt in her throat and wanting to cling onto them when she saw her parents at the door, welcoming her home. Everything flowed out violently in her tears as Naruto dug her face into her mother's shoulder. Jiraiya sighed, watching the mother and daughter sleep with a smile. He and Naruto had decided on telling Kushina about the seal tomorrow, seeing as the woman was most likely exhausted. Those two hadn't stopped crying, and when they finally did, they were too tired to take watch, so they decided on using chakra-sensing seals and spread them around the camp. He yawned, he had been awake until a few hours past midnight, since the seal only works for roughly 5 to 6 hours. Checking for chakra signatures around one last time, he stood up and stretched, walking to the seal on his bag. He picked it up, drew his chakra into it, and watched as the complicated characters climbed up from the tip of his finger to around his wrist. It should spark chakra when someone enters within the range of the other seals, waking him up from his sleep. Letting out a sigh of relief when he finally lied down inside his sleeping bag, he gratefully thanked whoever created the art of seals and succumbed to exhaustion. Kakashi glared at his cooked salmon and stabbed it with his chopsticks, imagining it was the blonde man seated in front of him. His father was chuckling at Minato's story and the little boy couldn't figure out what was so funny. Kakashi continued picking at his food. Tsukumo notices this and frowns. Don't do that. The boy stops and he raises a brow. The man had never seen Kakashi play with his meal before. What's wrong? Nothing. Kakashi said curtly before gulping down his miso soup. Minato smiled, thanks for being Naruto's friend, Kakashi-kun. He blinked, looked down at his rice and nodded. So he really was Naruto's father. Are you going to do the graduation exams? Minato asked pleasantly, and he was answered with, again, another nod. He grinned, the little boy was cute. I see. What do you want your team sensei to be like? Kakashi thought on his question. Smart, strong, calm. Minato hummed thoughtfully before staring at Tsukumo, who sat next to the boy. His description fits you. And you, Tsukumo said, smiling, mostly during missions though, the calm part. Hey. I'm calm when I want to be. It makes me wonder if you and Kushina swapped personalities. Tsukumo chuckled, I remember the days when she used to be brash and loud. Now she's all grown up. She's still brash. Kakashi looked between the two, brows furrowed in confusion. Are you and father good friends? He asked Minato, who simply grinned. He's my senpai from the academy and my girlfriend, Kushina, she's one of your mother's best friends, Tsukumo ended for him when the blonde trailed off, smiling at the boy's wide eyes. Don't you remember them, Kakashi? Minato and the red-haired lady. Kakashi frowned, shaking his head before taking a bite of his cooked fish. He was about to eat another, but paused. I remember. She used to draw with me, although he never quite understood what she drew or she wasn't very good at drawing. Tsukumo nodded, she's Kushina. She hung around our house quite often to see your mother and play with you. I was only around a few times with your father, since most of the time we'd be on missions, so I guess you wouldn't remember me. Minato smiled before he thought for a moment. You and Kushina got on rather well, I remember we all went to the swings at the playground with Mikoto. Do you remember her? She has black hair and eyes. Kakashi nodded, recalling that he had played with her and Kushina-san when he was younger. He loved swinging then, but now he didn't see how he found it entertaining. He ate a piece of eggplant from his soup. She used to hum a lot of songs with mother. Kakashi ignored how his chest seemed to constrict with each tick of the clock and stuffed more food down his throat. Using his chopsticks, he ate all the rice left in his bowl, leaving none left, before setting both down. Gichi-sama. May I leave the table? At Tsukumo's nod, Kakashi picked up his dishes and brought them to the kitchen. When he got out, he went straight to his room. Minato smiled sadly as he watched the boy's back and faced Tsukumo when the bedroom's door closed. He really changed, huh? Sorry about that, Tsukumo sighed, I really wish he would open up more. Namikaze shook his head, it's been tough on him. Sorry about suddenly mentioning her when it's still. No, it's alright. Tsukumo took the last bite of his fish and rice. It's about time we moved on. Not forget but be able to talk about her happily. She would have wanted that. Minato smiled before picking up his plate and bowls. It's about time we finished dinner, don't you think, senpai? He grinned, Kakashi still has his sweet tooth doesn't he? Tsukumo chuckled, stacking his dishes as well. Yes, he does. Great. Strawberry shortcakes for dessert. They had changed into civilian clothes and entered a small village to find a place to rest. The three bought groceries and stayed at an inn, and Kushina made more rice balls for their trip. Once they were settled, the three sat down facing each other on their futons. Alright, it's about time we discussed why you're on this mission, Kushina. Jiraiya sighed, initially it was because the Hokage planned on letting you help each other tame the Nine Tails, to put it frankly. But now we have another reason why we need you right now. Naruto caught Kushina's attention by rolling up her shirt, revealing her two seals. On the second seal, there's a lock that stops me from destroying it. I need your chakra to get rid of it, since mine is already affected by the caster of the jutsu. Kushina nodded, crawling over. Where is it? Naruto pointed at it, and the woman immediately put the tip of her finger on the swirl mark. She drew her chakra to it and felt the mark heat up to the point it almost burned. When Kushina brought her hand down, Naruto grinned, the swirl had disappeared. Jiraiya chuckled as he got out a blank scroll, finally. Okay, it will take a few moments, so be patient, Naruto. He placed his right palm on her stomach and narrowed his eyes in concentration. The seal slowly contracted, squeezing itself into an inky black circle before it was sucked onto Jiraiya's hand. He immediately slammed it onto the scroll, while Kushina and Naruto watched in fascination as the seal spread back into its former self. The blonde's eyes were full of awe, it had been a long time since she last did or saw someone do this. There, it's done, Jiraiya said with a sigh. Naruto blinked. She took a moment to take in his words, that was over and done with so easily that it's weird. Huh? The man scoffed. It was easy for you since you didn't have to do anything, but for me it took a little effort. You're getting a little rusty, she retorted, it was a piece of cake when I move a seal. Jiraiya scowled, if you haven't realized, this is an ancient complicated seal, not an ordinary one. Yeah. Kushina sighed at their antics, well, at least the problem's solved. She frowned, if the seal was still on you what would have happened? Naruto blinked at her question, oh, I would have died within a year. Oblivious to her mother's horrified face, she flopped back onto her fluffy futon with a content sigh. With that gone, I can think of plans on how to save the world in peace. Jiraiya rolled his eyes, and Kushina recovered from her thoughts of what if she hadn't been able to unlock the seal, or if Jiraiya had failed. Naruto yawned loudly, eyes opening and closing droopily. For some reason I'm starting to feel really sleepy. The girl was knocked out within 5 seconds, and Jiraiya blinked. She must have been a lot more stressed about it than I thought. She can hide a lot of how she feels, after all. Her masks are very strong. Kushina smiled regretfully, almost makes one wonder how she learned to make them that way. Like she said before, it's not your fault or Minato's. Besides, we'll be able to stop that from happening again with her here. Jiraiya stood up and walked until he stood next to her. He put his hand on top of her head comfortingly, don't think too much on it. Yeah, thanks, Jiraiya-sama. Kushina finally grinned. You're welcome. For a pervert, you're an awesome guy at making people feel better. Of course, Jiraiya bit his thumb, grinning mischievously. I'm a super pervert after all. You're unbelievable. Wait, were you summoning a Kuchiyus for? Oh, just to send this away, he waved the closed scroll containing the seal, before tossing it to Fukasaku. It's been a while, Fukasaku-sama. Tell me, Jiraiya-chan, are you using the way you address me to make up for your actions? The toad asked, catching the scroll that was the same size as him with ease. Jiraiya rubbed the back of his head with a goofy grin. And yes, it's been a while. Oh, hello there, Kushina-chan. How are you? That'd be better, Fukasaku-sama, she replied sheepishly, before smirking, you haven't changed a bit. I guess I haven't, he chuckled, before leaping to the sleeping girl. He stared before blinking, as if having come out from his daze. This child, is she yours, Kushina-chan? She looks an awful lot like you and Minato-chan. Oh, it's a little complicated, but yes, she is. Don't tell Minato, though. He doesn't know the situation, and Kushina stopped herself from rambling with a light blush of embarrassment. Naruto's her name. Fukasaku furrowed his brows, Naruto-chan. Kushina beeped her head to the side, a worried but confused expression on her face. Is there something wrong? No, there isn't, but have I met her before? Jiraiya watched Fukasaku's reaction to the blonde girl carefully. The smile on his face was gone, now being replaced with seriousness as he slowly brought his hand down back to his side. Hey, Kakashi, where's Naruto? Mika asked, obviously bored as she crouched and leaned against said boy's desk. Shizuka got her book and tapped the girl's head with it, and Mika got the message. She huffed and sat on Naruto's desk, chomping on her bread. Kakashi, who was resting his cheek on his palm, looked at her in annoyance before going back to his book. How would I know? All he knew was that she was off on a mission. Just the mention of her name had him irritated. Ah. You're no fun. Shizuka smacked the orange-haired girl on the back of her head, rolling her eyes, before she glanced at the book in Kakashi's hand. Ah, Legend of a Gutsy Ninja. Did Naruto show you that one? She had a small smile on her face, she was the one who showed me it. I found that book interesting. Mika blinked, before wrinkling her nose. You talk a lot only when the conversation is related to books. What are you whining about this time, Mika? Genma walked up to them, raising a brow. Genma. Mika threw herself on him, wailing. Shizuka loves books over Mika, isn't she too cruel? I thought you've realized that a long time ago already. Genma. She cried pitifully. Kakashi scowled, and even with the mask they can tell by hearing it in his tone. You're too loud. The orange-haired civilian was much too similar to a certain blonde. Go away. The nerve threatened to pop as Mika glared, and you're too much of a brat. She flicked him on the forehead. Hard. You. Mika smirked, keeping him from attacking her by holding him down with her hand. Her two friends watched in amusement as Kakashi waved his hands violently at her in vain. Boy, Mika, that's enough. Said girl pouted at Genma before she abruptly let go and stepped back just in time for Kakashi to fall onto his desk. But honestly, she started, scowling, it's so boring without Naruto. I'm getting sick of the pranks Kippei thinks up. Shizuka rolled her eyes, then why listen to him at all? Because if I don't I'll be bored. Kakashi frowned at her, before shaking his head. What a waste of time. Mika glared, before smirking. Oh really? I guess you haven't heard. He stared at her, and she continued. Pranks are the best way to build up on your stealth. Isn't that just an excuse? Mika's brow twitched, and she averted her gaze. No. I'm telling the truth. I mean, being able to prank a bunch of Chuninins is an amazing achievement, isn't it? You can use the stuff you learned from setting them up on high-ranked missions. Kakashi's ears seemed to twitch at the last 3 words, and Mika knew she hit her mark. Devil horns seemed to grow on her head, and she smirked evilly. Think about it. You can slip right under the enemy's noses if you master the arts of stealth. To reach that point, you need to be awesome at doing pranks. Shizuka and Genma sighed simultaneously. Mika had recruited another ally. It's a little sad that Naruto isn't around to see this, but oh well. The orange-haired girl, clad in black, smirked as she turns to Kakashi and then to Kippei. They nod and she nods back. Time to put the plan in action. She was eternally grateful to Naruto, the little blonde had taught her in Kippei, he had taken quite a while to get it down, how to walk, crawl, on walls. The ceiling in the academy building was high and no one would suspect people to be hanging from it. The three were using one hand to keep them crouching upside down. Mika's expression cried hysteria as she got one paint-filled balloon out, the two boys following suit. The kids shifted in their positions and adjusted their grip on their weapons. Mika looked down at the bunch of Chunin, obviously having a meeting. They were talking about the schedules. She rolled her eyes at one of them as they said that it would be a good idea to shorten snack breaks. She grinned and nodded to her partners. They sucked in a breath, aimed, and fired. They kept going, taking out more balloons, fully enjoying the yelps and shouts of their teachers. The adults were too shocked to move for a moment and the three took advantage of that. Now the floor and the teachers were a fabulous mix of pink, blue, yellow, and red. Mika grinned. Now for the final touch. Now, Kakashi, Kippei. The two boys complied and the three watched in awe and satisfaction as a whole cloud of glitter sparkled its way down onto the utterly horrified group of Chunin. "You brats are so dead." One of them screeched when he finally came to his senses. "Run, run, run." Mika laughed, oblivious to Kakashi's terrified expression. Why on earth did he agree to this? Oh, hold on. The civilian girl abruptly stopped, whipping out a camera from her bag. "Need to take a picture." "It should be here," Jiraiya said as they reached close to Omegakure's borders. Naruto and Kushina shared a glance before the latter asked, "What should?" "The place we decided on," he replied. "Oh, here he is." The mother and daughter did a double take when they heard a deep voice behind them. "This is the map of the village, Jiraiya-sama," the man said. He wore a black coat and the shadows covered his face completely. His equally black gloved hand appeared from underneath his coat, holding out a paper. Jiraiya nodded, "Thank you." The man bowed his head before disappearing. Naruto closed her gaping mouth, blinking. "He's your spy." "Yes, what did you think?" "But he looks like a freaking ghost." Kushina smacked the back of her head. "Don't be rude. He might still be around." "Hey, even you're not denying it." Jiraiya rolled his eyes, "Come on, we should hurry." Naruto tiptoed to see the map. "Oh hey, it has updates on what's going on." "What?" "Let me see," Kushina nodded, "that's very useful." "It looks like the ambush hasn't started yet." The girl furrowed her brows and clenched her fists. Jiraiya ruffled her hair, "Don't worry too much. We'll save them." Naruto sighed and took a deep breath. He was right. Worrying about it wouldn't get her anywhere. She followed them into the village after they written down their aliases, noticing the stairs. She shivered, being reminded of unpleasant childhood memories. Hanzo must be confident if he lets in 3 possible threats inside the village, she noted, eyeing the guards. They had only turned more rigid at their appearance, but hadn't moved from their spot. "We're in civilian clothes and look nothing more than a wandering family. They're probably just dismissing us as people looking for a home," Kushina explained. The 3 of them wore waterproof coats, wearing their hoods. They sealed their weapons inside small scrolls and hid them inside the hidden pockets of Naruto's jacket. As expected, one shinobi finally walked up to them, glaring. "Open your bags and take off your coats." They did as told and the man patted Naruto and Jiraiya's body. He left Kushina alone, seeing as she wasn't wearing anything bulky or loose. Naruto inwardly grinned when he finally stopped, her jacket was thick and puffy, so of course he wouldn't feel the scrolls. While the group wore their coats back on, the guard raised a brow. "Why are you wearing such hot clothing? It isn't very cold." Kushina answered for him, smiling pleasantly. "She has a slight fever." He blinked before stepped back. "My apologies. You may go. Leave as soon as you're done here." Nodding in thanks, the team rushed to an inn. They pulled down their hoods once under shelter. The receptionist was an old woman who smiled at the sight of the blonde little girl. "Good evening. A room for 3. At their nods, she stood up and took a key, a wooden block with the room number attached. "Here you go." "Thank you," Jiraiya said, and Naruto grinned up at her as she followed her mother to their room. Naruto immediately took out a duvet out from the large built-in cupboard and threw herself on it. "Naruto, make your bed first." Kushina scolded lightly, hiding a smile. "But I'm tired." Jiraiya stayed quiet for a moment, staring at the blonde with sharp eyes. "As I thought, the seal took a big toll on her." He frowned, or maybe her exhaustion could just be because she hadn't gone on a trip outside for a long while. Naruto was in her 5-year-old body, after all. "No buts. Come on, I'll help you," the mother sighed, getting out the sheets and mattress. While they sorted out the futons, Jiraiya studied his map of the village. He furrowed his brows, thinking. The organization's goal is world peace, so surely they wouldn't immediately start attacking them when they entered the area. Furthermore, they had a child, so that should lower the Akatsuki's guard. The Akatsuki headquarters was far from where they were staying, Jiraiya noted with a frown. He then looked for the stations Hanzo or Shinobi might be in, and the frown morphed into a scowl. There was one in the way to their path to reach the Akatsuki base. So we'll have to get around that. He sighed, running a hand through his white hair, feeling exasperated. They'll take roughly an hour just to get to the organization, since they had to walk the speed of an average civilian in order to not arouse suspicion. Just great, he hissed under his breath. Naruto perked, what was that, Hiro-sennin? I'll tell you later. Jiraiya said, sighing in resignation at the nickname. He'll have to explain to them later, because the mother and daughter were in a particularly good mood. He didn't want to spoil it. Reading the notes at the side, he smirked. That spy was good. Hanzo ruled the civilians using fear, sending ninja around the streets to guard. The Akatsuki are their hope, as news spread quickly that they were founded for the sake of peace. The people hope the Akatsuki will break Hanzo's way of governing and take power. Yahiko, Nagato, and Konan, being the founders, are the most high up in the Akatsuki. Yahiko is the official leader, but it seems that Nagato is the leader in the shadows. Information on Hanzo is tightly kept away from the public. I had trouble, but I suspect he has some ties with Danzo Dono. I haven't found solid evidence, but a man who had been dressed as a Rudanbu had been secretly meeting Hanzo. Their next meeting will be in 3 days from when you will receive this paper. Jiraiya frowned, 3 days. That would mean the ambush would definitely not happen in 3 days. Well, that's perfect for us. If their talk with the Akatsuki goes well, they could plan something against Hanzo's ambush. He jumped when a small body dropped onto his back. Whatcha thinking so hard for, Hiro-sennin? Naruto peered over his shoulder, noticing the crinkled paper. Oh, the map. Where's Kushina? Jiraiya asked, looking around the room. Naruto replied while she read the paper, she went down to ask for another sheet, we're missing one. I see, Jiraiya sighed and waved her away. Shoo. I'll talk about this when she gets back. It's good news. Aw, come on. You can tell me now and I'll tell her for you. Come on. Now. No. How about now? Naruto fluttered her eyes open, dazed by the warmth of the water around her. Where am I? Her voice echoed in the sewage-like room, before remembering. Odd, she thought with a frown, why, even if it was only for a moment, couldn't she recall that this was her mindscape? She turned around to face the giant fox behind the bars. She tipped her head in as a small greeting. Long time no see, furball. The demon stayed silent for a while, confusing her. He finally sat up, making himself look much larger than when he was on his stomach. It would be a good idea to take that seal on your forehead off as soon as possible, he said, and strangely, there was no malice or a hint of a sneer in his voice. Amused, she furrowed her brows. Why? She had almost forgotten about it. You really haven't noticed? She grew impatient. Noticed what? That thing is slowly blurring up the memories you hold dear. You haven't realized this only because you thought it was because of the one that Sage removed. What are you talking about? Naruto rubbed her temples tiredly. Ugh, I'm starting to get a headache. The Sandaime doesn't know enough about that memory seal. The faster you take it off, the safer your memories will be. Naruto glared, the old geezer knows what he's doing. You humans are much too gullible, he sneered. That thing only works for a while. A month at most. It would have been longer if you didn't have that seal the whirlpool Kunoichi casted on you. She widened her eyes. What happens after that? It accelerates the speed of losing your memories by, well, you could say freezing your spiritual chakra. That's what that thing was doing. Too much. That side effect grew stronger because of the think of a name to call that damn Yuzushio Kunoichi seal. Oh, Naruto blinked before knitting her brows together in thought. Age sucker. To think that that's the best you can come up with. Hey, the first name I thought of was Tits Remover, but I figured you would hate that, so I chose Age Sucker instead. He scoffed, very well. The side effect grew stronger because of the Age Sucker, since it weakens your chakra. Wait, if that forehead seal is freezing my chakra, how can I still think? It doesn't actually freeze it so it won't move anymore, you idiot, I meant that it slows your spiritual chakra down drastically, but not to the point you won't be able to think or remember anything. Oh. And the reason you probably didn't notice this was because you didn't pay attention in class and already knew what you had to remember. Besides, your memory span is that of a goldfish's. Goldfish? What the heck are you talking about? Apparently, the insult was lost on her. What an idiot, he thought with a scowl. You should hurry. Your mental form would start to get closer to the age you are now reduced to outside. Well, that won't be good. Of course not, idiot, because it would remind me every time you come here that I'm stuck inside a pathetic weak-looking brat. Alright. All I have to do is take this darn thing off, right? Yes, but I doubt. Well, why didn't you just say so? Oblivious to his downright fuming look, she noticed that she was starting to wake up. Oh, well, gotta go now, furball. Kurama growled irritably before taking a deep breath. I doubt that perverted sage or your mother would be able to do anything about it. Naruto's jaw hung loose, almost snapping off before Kushina slammed it back up. The three were walking in the forest, veiling their chakra to pass off as ordinary civilians. Most likely there would be chakra sensors since they were very close by a station. What do you mean you can't take it off? I can't. He sighed, that seal's ancient, as the Hokage might have told you, and it's forbidden. I can't have learned it, and neither could Kushina. But Jiji wouldn't have used it unless it's absolutely necessary, I know. Jiraiya raked a hand through his hair, now loose without the metal plate he usually had. And it was. But he didn't know the side effects like QP did and thought it would hold for much longer. There were no other seals that could hold as much as 16 years of memories, and even if there were they wouldn't have lasted even as long as 2 weeks. No way. Naruto casted her eyes down in disappointment and kicked a pebble. But this is serious, Jiraiya pondered, a worried frown on his face. For a while, neither of the three spoke. Kushina didn't like the tense atmosphere and decided to lighten their mood up a bit. We're lucky that there's no rain, huh? She said with a smile, we can just say we're on a walk if we happen to cross paths with ninjas. Naruto grinned, appreciating her light talk. Yeah, they can't say no to that. And then it was quiet again, the three of them having nothing to say. It stayed that way until they were a small distance away from the station. They eyed the small cement building warily, and only after they were meters away did they start grinning in triumph. The watchers must have thought that no one would be out here on a weekday. Don't lower your guard, Jiraiya warned them. The Akatsuki might see us as a threat. We'll have to uncover our chakra so they'll know we're heading to them, and hopefully they will understand that we come in peace. What are we, aliens? Naruto thought dryly, but nodded. She never planned on lowering her guard, not for a moment. By the time they reached the tall tower, slightly obscured in the dark clouds. If anything, the Akatsuki base looked haunted. Naruto gulped at the thought of ghosts, praying to her fabulously and amazingly awesome gods that the inside would be different from the out. After all, you can't judge a book by its cover, right? Well, she hoped she was right. She noticed that Kushina and Jiraiya had walked on without her, now ready to open the tall metal door. Hey. Wait for me. Kakashi now felt a tiny bit of respect, just a tiny bit, towards Naruto. Doing a prank every week was tough, but that girl would be sure to have 3 done without breaking a sweat. Now, he, Mika, and the idiot Kippei, though his plans are great, the older boy loved grating on his nerves, were running away from their Chunin teachers after another failed prank. The adults were absolutely surprised to see the perfect little 4-year-old student participating in something like this. It caught them off guard every time, but the effect was starting to wear off. So the 3 children were being chased all around the school. They reached the staircase, having trouble deciding whether to go up or down. The enemy was closing in, they can hear the fast footsteps from the corridors. Up. Down. They snapped their heads to the upper staircase, hearing shouts. The 3 immediately decided on going down, skipping a few steps. Only to bump into one pink-haired, orange-clothed, very angry Chunin. Well, at least their prank had been partly successful. If we finish this right, Tobi will never be a part of the Akatsuki. Naruto clenched her fists at the sight of the young man, and those 3 will be saved from their suffering. Her azure eyes stared back at his Rinnegan with determination. Nagato will still hope for true peace. She inhaled slowly, so please. What business do you have here? He asked, his unwavering, unique eyes watching them. Konan stood not too far behind him, and Yahiko was calmly walking up to them. The 3's eyes flickered toward Jiraiya when he came out of the shadows, revealing himself. Nagato had glanced at Kushina's red hair that was similar to his own, before he gazed back down at the blonde, fearless girl in front of him. The end. So how was this part? I hope you like it. And if you like it, share this part with your friends, and like the video too. And don't forget to subscribe our channel for daily awesome fanfiction. Okay, it's time for me to go. Bye bye.